Thank you guys so much for coming out today for the screening of this movie I love so much, The Hate You Give. At this time, please join me in welcoming today's guest. Since her breakthrough performance in The Hunger Games, this has been an actress who consistently delivers standout performances. You may have seen her recently in Everything, Everything or Where Hands Touch. Still, I doubt even her biggest fans were prepared for her heartbreaking, wonderful work in this movie. Please welcome Amandla Stenberg. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
That's not normal, by the way. I was telling her, we were standing off to the side, and I was like, this is a really, vocal audience. I heard you guys clapping during it, and I know exactly when you laughed. I was like, oh, her dad just met her boyfriend. Yeah. One of my favorite moments. But this is actually an audience of all SAG actors, so I always like to start by asking, how did you get your SAG card?
I got my SAG card from a McDonald's commercial, I want to say, when I was 7.
Wow.
I think. Yeah. And I remember I was really embarrassed up until that point that I didn't have my SAG card, because I would be around all these little child actor kids who would be like, do you have your SAG card? No? Well, you can't sit with us. Which is a crazy thing to be worrying about as a small child. Yeah. But anyways.
Are you sure there weren't some adults who said that too? Because...
Oh, God, I hope not. I probably blocked it out.
Well, again, this movie is fantastic, and I know it's based on Angie Thomas's New York Times bestseller. How did the story first find its way to you? Was it the book or the script, and what attracted you to the project?
So I have to give big props to my mom, because my mom actually passed along an article about the manuscript to me, the manuscript of the book. So it hadn't actually been adapted yet. The book actually wasn't even published, but the manuscript was getting a lot of buzz within the young adult fiction world, and because people had read it and were so blown away by it, it was already looking at being optioned to be turned into a film. So my agency acquired the manuscript of the book, and then I got it, and I read it on my phone in about 7 hours and couldn't put it down. I had no intention of starting and finishing it. It's just one of those incredible, pieces of literature that you can't put down once you start. And I identified so heavily with Starr and her experiences, and was just blown away by Angie and how powerful her words were, and how she had managed to take these events that we've become so desensitized to and place them in this really beautiful, personal, heartfelt, challenging, but warming narrative. And so then I told my agent, I was like, we have to chase this as hard as we can. And I attached really early on, while the book was still a manuscript. And then as they went into the process of script writing, I was there, and I was kind of giving my own, details from my life that were kind of similar to Starr's. And then actually when the book was published, it became this huge phenomenon. And it immediately went to #1 on New York Times bestseller, and has been there for 90 weeks or something crazy like that. And once that kind of additional pressure was on, I was actually asked by the studio to audition.
Oh, wow.
So I went through all that. I was like, this character's in my heart, this story's in my heart. And then they just wanted to make sure, because there was that additional, pressure of having that fan base, that audience, and the book had garnered so much prestige that they just wanted to ensure that I was the right person. And so then I went ham on the audition, because I was like, this is my shit right here.
That can't be a great feeling, but at the same time, is there some solace in knowing you earned it, going in there, and so that no one is surprised when you show up? I've heard some actors say they actually prefer auditioning, because if someone tries to fire them, they can be like, hey, you knew what I could do.
Yeah, for sure. I also just, as a huge fan of the book, I wanted to make sure that the book was being done justice, and I wanted to make sure that it was the right person, no matter who that was, even if it wasn't me. And so it meant a lot to me, to go through the audition process.
Do you remember what scenes they asked you to do?
They asked me to do the scene on top of the car at the end. And then I believe I did the scene. It was a lot of scenes. The scene with my dad in the bedroom, where he explains the prison industrial complex, pretty much. And then they asked me to do the scene with Chris at the beginning.
Oh, wow. At this point, were you the first person cast then, or had they attached anyone else?
At that point, I was the first person. Yeah.
Okay.
And then we went through the whole casting process, and I attached a year earlier before we even were in casting like that. So I already had this relationship with the director because we had met each other and started having conversations. And so by the time we actually got to the casting process, we were kind of already collaborators. So I actually got to really be internally a part of that process in a way I never got to before.
Because I mean, the actors who play your family in this movie, specifically Russell Hornsby and Regina Hall, so fantastic. Were you familiar with their work? Like when I don't know if you did chemistry reads with them or if that was just something that happened naturally. And I also want to say your brothers in this movie, Lamar Johnson, and TJ Wright. TJ is amazing. Yeah. Were you part of that casting process?
Yeah, I was. I was familiar with Regina's work, and was a big fan, and just freaked out when I heard that she was even, being considered. Russell's work I wasn't as familiar with, but as soon as I saw his tape, I was like, oh, this is the dude right here, because he was just so powerful and grounded, and like everything that he says and does like comes from like here, like somewhere deep and really rooted, and that was kind of exactly what we felt like Starr needed, because she gathers those tools and those kind of superpowers, from her dad.
How did you sort of go about achieving that chemistry? Were you able to spend time together? Like, I don't know. Sometimes I know that they send families on dates to, kind of hang out.
Yes, we were we were sent on many dates. They were so lovely, though. We went to an arcade. We went, what's it called? Go-karting. Yeah. We went to dinner together, and we had about 2 weeks of rehearsal. And George had us do some exercises that I had never encountered before. And I'm not going to reveal all his tricks of the trade, but he had ways of making us work with each other so that we kind of laid this really amazing foundation to work off of. And it was so easy, you know, because everyone was so prepared. Everyone wanted to be there for the right reasons, and put their heart fully into it. And so because everyone had that kind of collective vision, it was just easy for us to love each other and to be excited to be there.
We have a couple audience questions, actually. One from Gail and Jared. They're asking the same question, basically. What is your process for preparing for a role in general and specifically for this movie?
I think it depends on the role, and I think I'm still figuring it out, honestly. But for this one, I mean, I basically had this Bible for the character because of the book. And so there was all this amazing source material, but this time round, I did something that I hadn't done before in the same way, which is go through the script and the text and really intentionally pick apart all of the character threads, like all the emotional threads that are happening, and then kind of pick apart all the parallels that are happening between Starr and her father, and then think about tangible ways to make those threads visible, I guess. But I had such amazing material to pull from already, and so I worked off of that, and then kind of this thick book of character threads or story and character arcs that like we had extrapolated by going through like all the subtext.
I mean, you're dealing obviously with some sadly timely and really tragic issues. Were you able to have levity on sets? I mean, I have to imagine it's got to be a little fun with Regina hanging around.
Yeah, I mean, Regina was always keeping us laughing, which was so important. I mean, Yeah, it was hard sometimes because I kind of feel like making this movie was just it was, oh, it's their
It's a
baby.
baby.
Oh, start him out young. Already toppling cis white patriarchy. Let's get it. Um, what were we talking
Don't
about?
know.
I don't remember. We were talking about, yeah, basically, I kind of felt like working on this movie was just kind of like an exercise in reflection when it came to Black experience, and like really allowing a lot of the emotions that we don't let ourselves process because there's not really time to, just really digging into them and allowing them to come up however they did, which at times was really painful, and really challenging, and there wasn't kind of like a, all right, we're off sweat, we're off sweat, well, we're off set, let's turn off, like that didn't really exist, because this is real, you know, and they're based in real emotions, and there was a lot that I could pull from in terms of my own life experience. So that was hard sometimes, and but the entire time I felt really surrounded by community and love, and just kind of there was this intentionality on set that made it feel so purposeful and worth it, and authentic, that I wasn't that afraid to go to those places, because also in some ways it was kind of therapeutic, because it's not often that we get to so directly express our anger or our fear, when it comes to being persecuted by white institutions.
I just saw a great quote today. Viola Davis said, "Anger is underrated." That like sometimes it's great to embrace that anger.
Yeah. Yeah. Who? Viola Davis? She's good.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Whew, Viola is everything. Viola is everything. Oh my God, I saw her this morning
Oh really?
deliver a speech at there was like a Hollywood Reporter luncheon.
Yeah, we don't talk about that. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Wait, why am I missing?
No, there are
something?
I'm making a
Rival.
terrible
Okay,
joke.
that's a
Yeah, yeah,
rival.
yeah,
Okay. Whew, she is
Yeah.
amazing. I'm still shooketh.
I know,
It
right?
was
She's amazing.
incredible. But anyways, yeah, I also like to think that anger is just like I didn't come up with this, but anger is grief that has been sitting for so long and has never been allowed to be aired, you know.
And when you're making a film like this, unfortunately and tragically, you can't get away from this topic because it's happening every day on the news. So I don't know if you really thought about sort of, ways to sort of engage in self-preservation while you were shooting this, like you sort of plotted out in advance ways to sort of decompress, or is it just impossible to do?
Nope, did not do that. Found myself kind of faced with the challenge of figuring out how to come down after the shoot, and was like, "Ooh, that's a learning lesson. Next time, we're gonna figure out ways to protect ourselves."
Right.
And just make sure we're putting those parameters in place to like go there, but like not have to go there. But I don't know. It felt like it was worth it for this one, just because it was just, I cared about this project so much, and it felt really important to me.
What was your hardest day on set? I mean, either a specific scene or just sometimes it's just the day,
The protest scenes were really challenging, because we were on night shoots for about 2 weeks. And so we were losing our minds. And it was freezing cold outside. We had to pretend that it wasn't. Yeah, and obviously it's really, Starr says some real things when she gets up on the car. But I kind of felt like it was this huge privilege to be able to protest through the medium of the film. And so, even doing that scene and delivering those lines into camera just felt like I was actually delivering them directly to the people who would be watching it, Probably what was actually most challenging, I thought it was going to be the the actual shooting scene. I thought that was going to be the hardest. But actually that just kind of required me to like be present and like react to what was happening.
Yeah.
Probably what was the hardest was actually the interrogation scene
Sure,
that happens right after,
Yeah.
because it was just kind of brutal to like enter the mindset of someone who has just recently experienced such trauma and stay in that space, and not have it be something that's reactionary, but something that like I was kind of sitting in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, speaking of chemistry, Algie Smith is tasked with this job of making us instantly fall in love with him, and then feel so devastated by his loss. And your guys' scenes together are so remarkable. Did you know each other at all? Again, was that just instant chemistry?
No, we didn't. George had us do some exercises, some unconventional things that I won't say exactly what they were.
Well, now we're all intrigued.
I'll just let your imagination run wild with that one. Yeah, no, it was just, I mean, Algie's also just really charming and really easy to love and, really easy to become friends with. And yeah, we had our amazing rehearsal time with George, and that just kind of set the foundation, I guess.
I want to take some questions from the audience. I apologize in advance if I mispronounce anyone's name. I think it's Nao. Is that correct? Oh, okay. Wanted to know what tools or disciplines have served you best as you've navigated your artistic journey.
What? Wait, can you say it one more time?
Since it's written down, I can. You want to look? It's nice handwriting, actually. Oh, give me no excuse to do this. I can't stop doing this. It's the greatest suit ever.
I like how you wrote Amanda, and then you were like, no, the L's in there. And you like scribbled it in. Respect. What tools or disciplines have served me the best as I've navigated my artistic journey? Prep. preparing, over preparing more. Listening. I think listening is really important, and I try to remind myself to do it as much as possible. Just keep my ears and my eyes and heart open to whatever's happening in front of me, because at the end of the day, that's the tea right there. What disciplines? Writing down thoughts, anything that comes to mind, and just kind of like using that as in like a lot of written work as like, I guess, prep. God, I've gotten so many different tools and gifts from like people that I've worked with like as I grow up. But make your own tea. Always make your own tea on set. Learn everyone's name. Yeah. I'm trying to think of more. Like when I'm asked in that way, it's kind of challenging.
You mean literal tea, right? Like you make your own.
Like make your own coffee or your own
Okay.
tea, because it keeps you in yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the biggest tool that I've ever been taught is to listen, and to if it's not coming, to not force it, but to let it kind of like rumble and like simmer down here until it's like ready to show up.
Sort of along those lines, question from Jay Lindsay. Jay, where are you? Did you sneak out? Oh, okay. Hey, wants to know if you have a mentor, and what's the most valuable lesson they've taught you thus far?
I have a lot of different mentors, but Russell was a huge mentor to me on this set, which I think is kind of just very clear, like his performance and what he brings. He's just a natural leader and is just so wise, and always pushed me to do better, and pushed me to be more truthful, and wouldn't like give me the answers as to how to do that. Would just ask me a question and leave it, and then I'd be sitting there like, man, why did he ask me that? What is he trying to get at? And then it kind of end up coming to my own conclusion or reaching an answer on my own, which I think is like one of the most powerful things that a mentor can do for you is push you in that way and never give you the answers, but ask you the questions to get there. Something that Russell said to me on set is he said, sometimes you have to keep your fist, but you have to put it in your pocket, which I think about a lot. And sometimes I'm like, what does that mean? I think it can mean different things depending on the circumstances, but you know, sometimes like I can kind of approach the world with like both of my fists up, like ready to go. But that doesn't always service me the best, because I think sometimes it's about keeping that resolve and that intent, but keeping it to yourself and guarding it and kind of holding it to you and protecting it, so that you can get what you need to get done.
This may be kind of a silly question, but you've worked with so many amazing actors. I'm wondering if when you're sometimes doing a scene with Russell Hornsby, do you lose yourself and forget your line because you're like, God, that's good?
That most definitely probably happened at some point. Yeah. But Russell was always there to support everyone around him, you know, and never to make it about himself, never to make it about his own performance, but to support in all the ways that he could. You know, he would, if he was off camera, and someone was in the scene and they were on camera, he would know what tools to give them to help them get to the right place. So there are certain scenes where he said all kinds of shit off camera that you would never know about. But when he watch a performance, I think like Russell is, you know, he's like a stage trained actor, and I think probably will be a director, and just understands the artistry of acting so deeply. And he would see if someone needed support or if he could help in some way, and then he would apply himself, and give them that tool by evoking a response from them or saying something that they needed to hear. Sometimes I wonder about that B-roll, like of just what Russell is saying off camera. If you like made a compilation, like I wonder what that would be like.
Tell him to put it on the DVD. I think that'd be awesome. A question from Sean Baker wants to know, what did you love most about making the film?
What didn't I love? I think the people. I think the people was the best part. You know, everyone was just so fully committed, and committed from such an authentic place, that it made it so easy. You know, I didn't feel like I was just there, like having my like services rendered. I felt like we were all collaborators and we were all on the same team.
How many days did you have to shoot? Because it was not a luxurious.
It was not many.
Yeah.
Let me think. We had 2 weeks of rehearsal, and then I think it was a 40-day shoot.
Wow.
Yeah, it was 40 days.
Wow. Question from Tina. This movie speaks a lot to living a life of integrity and authenticity and using your voice in a positive way to change the world around you. What would you say to other people of our generation that want to help but don't know where to get started? You can take some time to think about this one if you need. Yeah.
This sounds cliche, but I would say follow your heart. I feel like if you follow your truth and your heart and where that's pointing you, that's also where you can be the most powerful or effective. Yeah, I don't think I don't know, making an impact comes from a place of doing the right way or the wrong way, or listening to how people tell you have to do it or shouldn't do it, or what you're allowed to do or what you can't do or what you should do. I think it really is just about following your inner voice and letting what needs to come through you come through you.
I feel like for as long as you've been in the public eye, you've been, outspoken and a strong advocate for things that are important. Where did you? No, thank you. Where did you sort of get that from? Has that always been in your nature? Is it something that your parents were involved in?
I mean, I probably get it from my mama, but I also think my peers too. I think I'm part of a generation where there's just like, wanting to do something productive or meaningful with your life, and at the same time respect all kinds of aspects of identity, and like explore that and discuss it and like appreciate it and like revel in that. I feel like that's like really intrinsic to my peers and my generation. So I feel like, you know, for a while I was just kind of doing my thing, and then I realized that my peers were leveraging whatever platform that they had to speak to those sorts of things or to explore them. And I realized that I could do the same. And I felt like it was also my responsibility because I was given the privilege of a platform really young. And so I wanted to use it to the best of my ability, both because it felt like the right thing to do, but also because it was fulfilling and rewarding, and it's like what I ultimately want to do as an artist.
Do you think that you sort of seek out movies with a social message? I mean, I'm thinking even back to Hunger Games, which is actually a very political film, you know, wrapped up in blockbuster entertainment. Was that part of the appeal of that?
Yeah, because I was the biggest fan of the Hunger Games books.
Really? Wait,
Yeah.
how old were you?
I was 11
Okay.
or 12. 11 or 12. I think I was 11.
Because they are intense books.
Yeah, but my mom let me read them, and I was like under the covers, like before school the next morning, like, oh my God. Yeah, I loved those books. I love those books.
Yeah.
So being in the franchise is still wild to me.
Yeah.
But I think maybe, I don't know, maybe that's always, I'm not really sure. I didn't really have that level of self-awareness at that age. I just liked what I liked, but maybe that has always been what I'm drawn to.
I want to remind people this movie is actually still playing in theaters, so please spread the word. It's such a special film.
Please.
Yes.
Spread it.
I would love for everyone to see it. I want to thank you for being a great audience, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Not again. Thank you.